And so we wait. And yes, I'm live. It is the Nazarite bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. I want to talk about this week's Torah portion, Metzora. And this might be very, very brief, although sometimes I've said that and it's been 2 hours. Not the case this time. Shabbos is a-coming. The Queen shall arrive. But I say it might be brief because it really is something I just thought of, let's say, recently. I want to share it. I don't know how well formulated it is, and I don't even know if I have an end there, but hey, that's why I'm doing this live, raw, and trying to understand if I'm just reaching at something or if there's something there. Before that, before Metzora, hey, hello there, somebody who's watching, hi. Before Metzora, let's see. Robert Harrison said yesterday, I think the Torah and oral Torah should not be allowed anywhere near each other. There's only one Torah, and that's the written law of Moses. So right, I do believe in the oral Torah. I don't believe it's precisely the way it has incarnated in modern day Orthodox Judaism, but definitely I do believe in such a thing as an oral law and a tradition which followed the written one, and something which goes, well, let's put it that way, right? That they go hand in hand. And so, okay, let's continue. And he said, there's more wisdom in Bereshit chapter 1 than Talmud, Gemara, Zohar, Rashi, Kabbalah combined. To which I said, and I want to speak of this for a second, but what I answered is I happen to think there's wisdom to other books and teachings, as you know. Certainly Bereshit 1 is my jam, so I'm inclined to agree with you somewhat. That whole idea, which I've been bringing up a lot lately, is, right, Istakel ba'oraita ubara alma. God, Midrash, right, Zohar. God looked at the Torah and created the world. The physical Torah that we have now with the physical letters and with the certain melodies and on skin, right, animal skin and that whole thing written in ink with a quill. That's all physical things. The spiritual, what would it be, like superseding idea, which is Torah, that's what the world is based in and on. The Torah is a blueprint of creation. What we have is our own way of hacking into it with the written Torah. And the oral Torah, I think, certainly has a great place right alongside it. But I do agree that in Bereshit 1, there's something there which is foundational, that even somebody without any kind of oral tradition, even if somebody just reads that chapter, you can recognize. I mean, I've been reading it ever since I was a boy. I'm not one to talk. I'm highly biased, I suppose, and I don't know what. But it seems to me that you can learn a lot from that chapter as a standalone thing. Genesis 1, Bereshit 1. I, as somebody who wants to follow the tree of life and find my path to that tree of life, our shared path, alongside it, and to partake of the fruit, and usher in that world to come, then, and usher in that Shabbos. Bereshit 1 certainly speaks to me, and this partly is what this channel is based in, or on, right? That idea of returning to Eden, and what that means to me, just personally. It's lovely to have this dialogue with you people. And Robert, I thank you for that. We disagree on the nature, perhaps, of the oral traditions and their practical, well, utility or practical implications, or what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, whether or not it should be implemented and all that, we disagree on issues with that. And I don't follow halacha blindly, you know. We still disagree on certain things, obviously. But I certainly enjoy the dialogue. More wisdom in Bereshit chapter 1 than Talmud, Gemara, Zohar, Rashi, Kabbalah combined. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with all of those things, with Talmud, right, with Mishnah, with Gemara, with Zohar and Kabbalah at large, and with Pashtanim, right, the simpler commentaries like Rashi's. Simple, I mean that he deals with the simplicity of the text in sort of a simple way. Not that his commentary is necessarily simple. I don't think I could manage it. Let's go to Parashat HaShavua Metzora, unless there's something in the chat. Hey, it's Pa. Hello, Pa. I certainly expect some good Torah from you at the Seder, God willing. That would be so much fun. I pray to Yah that I will be able to receive some Torah and share it with you. If only simply passing on other people's Torah, which is a big part of, of my thing. So yeah, I hope so too. Let's go to Parashat HaShavua Metzora, the weekly Torah portion. Now, in this week's Torah portion, it speaks less of the body and more of the house. In last week's Tazria, the Torah portion Tazria, there was the leprosy of the individual, where the individual has some sort of something resembling, some skin condition. They call the priest. The priest then either purifies or makes the person ritually unclean with his decree. The priest looks. There's a lot of dealing with the priest's vision and what he sees and what it looks like, this idea of a Levitical perception. If you have some sort of disease, usually you would call a physician, a surgeon, whatever the case may be, a healer, but the priest here, more than at the altar and temple service, perhaps, is that shamanic thing, the one-on-one healer, shaman, right? Hebrew healer, shaman vibration, if you will, where somebody has a skin disease and they don't call a physician, they don't call a surgeon, they don't call some sort of merely a physical healer, if you will, if there is such a thing. Probably not. They call a priest, right? They call a Kohen. The Kohen looks, there's this, there's that. At the end, he's purified, right? He shaved his hair. And in this week's Torah portion, we speak of leprosy of the house. Now, I spoke, I think, 3 years ago, and maybe possibly also 2 years ago, about this, about Rashi, that says that I'm not sure if he brings a midrash or if it's own commentary. It might, I think it might be his own commentary. But it sounds very midrashic at any rate, that the Torah specifies this leprosy of the house not as a maybe, but that it will happen. It's a kind of certainty. When you arrive at the land of Israel, right, at the land that you will inherit, God will place leprosy in your homes. Oh, maybe not every single home, but it will be a thing. Leprosy in the house. And so again, the priest comes, there's a whole ritual, there's quarantine, and then certain parts are taken out and they're filled in, and at very extreme cases of leprosy which spreads, the entire house is demolished and its foundations ripped out, and the very earth and soil which carried the foundation is taken outside of the city to a place which is defiled, which is impure. And I want to bring here, in regards to the house getting this disease of leprosy, this what will be affliction of leprosy. I think it's a very singular case, very singular case of a home being. Is there any mention of it occurring in Tanakh? I wonder, in the Bible. Is there any mention of this ever again, this leprosy of the house? My thoughts are running right now, and I'm trying to think, have I ever read, there are different markings and things, and we know that on the wall of, what was it, Nebuchadnezzar, right? Takel maneu parsin, right? Where there's writing on the wall, but that's not an affliction. That's writing. That's something, well, you could argue, but it's not house leprosy. It's not leprosy of the home. Okay, taking into account that it's like very, very singular, and I don't think it appears, or I might be wrong. Please, does the tzara'at, the leprosy of the home, does it ever appear again? Does anyone know? Do tell. My voice is going here. Never mind. Okay, now the home. When I read it earlier today, I was reminded of a Mishnah in Masechet Yoma, which deals with Yom Kippur, the holiday of atonement, Chag HaKippurim. And it starts off, right, the first chapter in the first Mishnah of Yom Kippurim, right? The Mishnah is dealing with the oral Torah, dealing with, or rather the rulings of the high court and the debate in regards to the high priest's conduct and Israel's conduct on Yom Kippur. That's what the oral law is, the halacha of Yom Kippurim. And it starts off with the high priest. 7 days before Yom Kippurim, they take him out of his home and they put him in a different location in the temple, Lishkat Palhedrin, the hall of Palhedrin. Now, they put a priest to become the high priest instead of him. There is this worry, let's say, or concern that if the high priest dies before Yom Kippurim, there will be no high priest to officiate over the ceremony and perform and carry out the rituals. And there will be no atonement, and that carries, well, I'm not precisely sure what it carries. But there are many different things pertaining to Yom Kippurim before the destruction of the temple, but I won't get into that. A different priest, right? A different priest is placed in his stead should he die. Rabbi Yehuda says that they even give the high priest another wife. They marry the high priest to another woman, and he anchors this in written Torah, as the Mishnah does. Rabbi Yehuda says, I'm reading from Sefaria here. Rabbi Yehuda says, they would even designate another wife for him, lest his wife die, as it is stated in the Torah, and it will atone for him and his house. Leviticus chapter 16, verse 6. In the verses dealing with Yom Kippurim and with the ritual, it says regarding the high priest when he's purifying the golden altar and everything that goes on there, and it will atone for him and for his house. Right? It's him and his house, it's him and his tribe, it's him and all of Israel. That's the progression there. And it starts with him and his house. And the sages interpreted the term his house, that is his wife. Beito zo ishto. The house is your woman, your relationship, your marriage, your partnership. That's your house. When the Torah says that there is atonement, the Torah specifically says the person's house. And we here read in this week's Torah portion of leprosy of the home, of the house. Thank you for reading the written Torah. I love the written Torah. I'm actually reading right now from my dining table Torah. I moved it over here to this room for the purposes of this. I wanted to be able to have a quick glance because it's something that's not properly formulated. And hello, Robert. Because it's not something that's formulated properly, I wanted to have the ability to look down at the text. And so here we speak of leprosy of the home. And we see that the sages, in some way, sort of metaphorically or conceptually equate the home with the person's woman, right? Or the woman with her partner, right? With her man. It's this idea of leprosy of the relationship, leprosy of a marriage, something like that. I'm taking that idea of biblical leprosy of the home, and I'm sort of tying it to the idea of the sages in Masechet Yoma in the Mishnah saying Beito zo ishto, his house, his home, that is his woman. And what is it that we do when there is leprosy of the home? We call the priest. We don't call the engineer. We don't call a builder. We don't call a contractor. We call the priest for the same reason that when it's in an individual body, it's because there is something else at work here that is not merely physical. There is something else at work here which requires Levitical, Aharonic, right, priestly intervention. Or at least this is like the spin I'm putting on it. This is the angle I'm going with right now. Now, you may say I'm tying this idea of the home to what the sages said is the home in the specific case of Masechet Yoma in the Mishnah. Okay, but that's simply my, stream of consciousness, so I got to roll with it, because what else am I to do? You never know what's going to happen, huh? The way that the priest comes and sees the home is, first of all, this. A person comes to the priest, and he says, I think it appears to be an affliction in the home. He doesn't say there is. He says it appears to be. You're coming from a place of humility. Before you go and investigate, you need to be humble. You need to not necessarily assume that you know the absolute truth. It's definitely an affliction. Kenega, like an affliction, is appearing in my home. The priest comes and he sees. Before he sees the actual affliction and comes into the house is evacuated of everything. Because if the priest shows up and proclaims the place ritually unclean, ritually impure, defiled with leprosy, then certain halachic and practical implications, or what's the word I'm looking for? Well, certain processes go into motion. Things having to do with cleansing and cleaning and becoming ritually pure again, not just for the individuals and the home or whatever, everything in the home, not just the actual building itself, not the structure or its foundation or its soil, but the actual artifacts in the home, things you lay on, things you eat with. There are things here having to do with halachas of purity and impurity, tum'ah v'tahara, which I know little about, because considering the corpus of text on tum'ah v'tahara, I know absolutely nothing. But I know that according to what the Torah says plainly, the house is evacuated. The different artifacts, the individuals, things. When the Kohen, when the priest comes to take a look at it, he is surgically focused on it, and there's nothing else in the house. It's like a very focused sort of investigation at that. So I see this as this idea of how to approach issues. Now, I'm oversimplifying to be sure, but just as a kind of meditation on how you would approach your house, your woman, if there's an affliction between you. To be focused and surgical, and to know to come with humility, and to evacuate different things, lest they be defiled by the fight. I see utility in that kind of thinking, only because I know from experience how many times you start with something relatively small, but then it spirals out of control, and suddenly you're talking about Pinky. Pinky wants out. What do you say, folks? Should I let her out? Of course I will. All right, Pinky Winky, out you go. Later, Pink. She's gonna be clawing back and shove the door open with her little pinky body. Oh. Okay. Leprosy of the home, leprosy of the relationship, going in with humility, going in with evacuating and taking out that which might be defiled by it. Now, again, you could say I'm reaching, but this is just how I'm thinking about it. Wait, now, let's see a second. Okay. Hold on a sec. All right. So the priest shows up, and if the priest decrees that the place is impure, unclean, then it's put in quarantine for 7 days. There's a period where you're just letting things be there. After 7 days, the priest returns to the premises and sees whether or not the affliction has spread. If it hasn't spread, then it's cool, right? You take out different things. You take out what was afflicted, and you replace it, right? If I'm not mistaken, it says, okay. So it says if it did spread. So if it didn't spread, it could be something else, and it's not leprosy. If it did spread, then it might be leprosy, according to the plain text of the Torah. And that means that they remove the stones, they remove that the filling between them, and they toss those out, and they bring new soil, right, new dirt, new stones, and they rebuild locally in the wall. And there's an idea there which, and at this point I went live. I was like, do I even have enough to go on to speak of this, which is really, really sort of ambitious? And I just have the edge of a lead, which may lead into nowhere, and there's a bunch of grasping at different concepts. Do I have enough? And the lovely answer is, I don't know if I have enough, but I have a few minutes here to try and wrestle with it a little bit, live on the air, and see if there's anything viable that can come out of it. Now, as far as I'm concerned already, even before we go any further, approaching any conflict with humility, approaching it with knowing that this is your home, your woman, your partner, this is where you live, this is who you live with. Knowing that you don't know everything is crucial, because sometimes you don't speak the same language. I know that my woman doesn't speak my language all the time, and I don't speak hers. When people get together, I think many times, and I've heard this concept, I'm not making this up, right? This idea of, and I spoke of this actually, I'm reminded suddenly, I spoke of this like years ago in a video, a few years ago. I'm suddenly recalling, though I might be wrong, about how you need to teach each other how to speak each other's language. It's crucial, because you can't assume, you need to really get focused and surgical here. So you need to have patience and humility if you're tackling this problem with the home. When the house is purified, wait, is it when the house is purified? Ba, 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 ba. Yes, when the house is made pure, when it's not completely demolished. Okay, so let's run the scenario. Something that appears to be an affliction appears in the home. Then the homeowner goes to the priest. The priest comes and checks it out, puts it in quarantine. It has spread. So they take out the stones that are afflicted, and the soil that's afflicted right in the wall, and they toss that all out, and they bring new soil and new material and new stones, and they make it anew, locally, in the wall. And it doesn't spread. And then the house is proclaimed pure and clean and ritually clean. And when that happens, there are two birds, is it doves? Two doves that are taken. One of them is killed, right? That has its neck snapped. What's called melika in Hebrew. The priest would do it with their pinky. Traditionally, they could do it with other things, but I think many of them chose to do it with their elongated or longer pinky nail. They would use it to break the neck of the birds from the back, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Not slice the throat or sever the windpipe, but break the neck if I'm not mistaken. That's what they do with birds. In some cases they separate, in some cases they don't separate, I don't recall, right? The head from the body. I don't recall. But I digress. Two birds. One of them is killed and one of them is set free. While it still carries on it, right? If I'm not mistaken, the blood, wait. Yes. The ritual goes like this. The homeowner takes a stick from a cedar tree and a hyssop, something from which is very tall, something which is very, very low, right? High and low, if you will. Erez and Ezov. And the living bird. He carries them together, right? This branch of cedar and a living dove and a, what would it be? What's it called? Like a handful of hyssop, and he dunks it, this little package, in the blood of the killed animal. And then he sets the bird free. There's also a bird that is set free in the ritual where an individual in his or her body are purified and made clean of leprosy. That's in last week. This week, when talking about the home, is something that's seemingly external to you, but is like really significant. It's part of your very life. Now, at times, you need to demolish it and just smash it completely, and then rebuild with new soil, with new foundation, new walls, new everything. And sometimes there is purity and cleanliness, and even then you will hopefully carry the mark of what happened there and learn to rebuild even without demolishing the home, like that living dove that is carrying the blood of the killed dove, to confront, to have a confrontation, to have a fight. Important to know how to do that. And I think maybe in some way, and again, maybe I'm completely twisting it, but that's simply the way I'm thinking about it right now. This idea of leprosy of the home. I still love the idea of finding treasures in homes afflicted with leprosy, which Rashi brings. I love that idea. And I also think that maybe there's some merit to this idea that I thought of now, though I clearly haven't articulated it properly. I don't know if it's coherent. Maybe it's complete gibberish right now, but I feel there's something at the core of this. Since the sages saw fit to compare the woman to the home, to compare your partner to where you live, and there's talk of, right, God's home, God's dwelling place, your dwelling place. There's something at play there, at work there, which is also why I think it's the priest, right, and that Levitical influence, that Levitical sight which the priest has. The Hebrew shaman healer that is the priest in cases of leprosy. Leprosy has a lot to do with ego. Leprosy has to do with, well, with bad speech, with the evil tongue, the tongue that wags for the wrong reasons. If something is wrong with you, it might manifest physically. If something is wrong with the way that you are living with your partner in your home, that's going to manifest physically. And biblically, it was this idea of leprosy. Now, there are many interpretations, but I'm trying to make that connection between the Mishnah and between the Torah here, in this specific case. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job, as I said. I'm going to say goodbye. It's been, 25 minutes. Oh, okay, wait. This hits home. Me and my woman been bickering. Humility. Hey, you know what? First of all, thank you. It means that I wasn't just blah, blah, blahing. So, you know what? Even if you're the only one who sees some connection here and now in this moment, then it was worth coming on here live and just going. And so, toda leya. And thank you, Robert. I mean, it resonates perhaps not for the best of reasons, but it resonates, and that means that I was able to bring something across. As for you and your woman, if outside of the chat or the comments, you can DM me. I know you DM me many times from her phone, but I don't know your policy or anything. But if you want to talk, I've lived with a woman for a while now, and even though not all women are the same, that's definitely sure. Um, Perhaps we could find some insight together into the nature of your problems. If you want an outsider's opinion of your viewpoint, feel free to DM me, man. To bicker with one's woman, it's so unsettling. It's so destabilizing. Really, really, really. I don't remember who it was. One of the sages that said that. Oh, what was it? I don't recall. Anyway, that there's this teaching where somebody mentions in the Talmud, someone mentions the idea of him and his woman only sharing one cover, one talit, one thing which covers you, and that they were happy in poverty, in like complete poverty. They had immense happiness. That takes a certain kind of partner, to be sure. And you certainly don't have to be poor to be happy. But the reason I mention it is because it's so, so very unsettling that even if you would have all the riches in the world, and all the I don't know what, when there's anger and strife and negative vibration between you and your woman, and when you love each other, when it's like I love that person so much, but come on, that sort of thing, it just rips at you, and it claws at you. I've had some bitter experiences fighting with my woman, and that spiraling out of control, which I mentioned, which is a lovely marriage trope or long-term relationship trope. Of, you start here and you end up over there. Little Andre, Shabbat Shalom, oh, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom to you too. And a smiley face. I know you like it when I do this accent, yeah. There, I'll stop. I do a terrible German accent, but since you were so horrified by it, I'm gonna be compelled to do that every now and then. Not too often. It won't be overkill, but you know, because yeah, it's a layup. Okay, little Andre, it's a layup. You just whoop with an alley oop. You just laid it up for me, and then what can I do? I'm a joker. I'm a smoker. I'm a midnight toker. Get my lovin' on the run. Thank you, says Robert. Thank you for sharing, and I hope that you'll be able to find the humility to work things out together, both of you. And look, even in this case of biblical leprosy, of the home, sometimes you gotta just completely ruin it. Some things are that foundational, some things are that irrevocable. And we can talk about that for a second, right? If we're talking about the riches, according to Rashi, that there were riches hidden in the homes, the full thing is that in the 40 years that Israel were wandering in the desert, the people of Canaan knew, the different people in Canaan knew that these people who were living there, a couple of hundred years ago, that they are a coming back. And they knew of what happened in Egypt, and they knew of the parting of the sea. They knew and this is part of what Rachav tells Yehoshua. The first city that's taken, Jericho, when the spies show up, the two spies, when they show up at Rachav's place, and she goes, "Oh, we heard of what you did there. We heard of what you did to the kings of the Amori." And the Amorites, says Rashi, in those 40 years were hiding treasures in their home. And later on, when the people of Israel, victorious, entered those homes, when they entered those homes, they got leprosy of the home of the house, and they were forced to demolish either the house or a wall, and then they would find the treasures. Meaning, even at a place of such tragedy, where you lose your very home and your foundation, your place of dwelling, where your home is your castle, and that whole thing, it's part of what you come home to escape that harsh, cruel world. And even that is taken away from you. But there's an opportunity there to rise up and be enriched, to take advantage of the opportunity, if you can perceive it. There's a treasure hidden there in the depths of the tragedy that you can grasp. And it's a matter of outlook, opinion, circumstances, of course, nothing across the board. But part of what the Torah is teaching us here is that from the deepest of crises, there can be great opportunity. Where something that you could not even foresee presents itself. A treasure that was buried in an unlikely place, in a home that they knew might be inhabited by another. I don't know what exactly the reasoning what the reasoning Rashi had, or the Midrash. I don't know who is quoting the Midrash, but I don't exactly know what the reasoning is there with the teaching of the Amorites hiding treasures for 40 years and then the Israelites finding them. I haven't gotten deep down into it. But I've known of it since I was a boy, reading Rashi, reading the commentary. And just to tie this together here from, let's say patience and humility, says Robert. And I said I agree with him. Wait, I don't know. You said you agree with him. I don't recall if I don't exactly know what you're talking about. Thank praise Yah, he says to Robert. Derech Hagav, I'm eating white chocolate as you speak. Well, enjoy the white chocolate. Not technically a chocolate, if I'm not mistaken. And there is vegan white chocolate, but I haven't had any yet, I think. And I was more a fan of dark chocolate, milk chocolate and dark chocolate. Not that great a fan of vanilla. If faced with the opportunity, I wouldn't take white chocolate, but it's certainly a nice addition to different things. Okay, so let's see. We spoke of patience. We spoke of humility. We spoke of sometimes being able to destroy, being able to be forced to destroy the thing from the very foundation. The very soil of it is afflicted. You get rid of all of it, but then treasures may be found there still, right? At the bottom of the right. It's unlikely to put it in the wall. It's more likely to put it underground. Although I might be mistaken. But either way, whether it's the wall that you knock down or the foundation and soil which you extricate and toss outside of the city, there's this idea of, I'm kind of tying it together, right? There's a richness there to the opportunity at hand. If you're able to make it through the crisis with your partner, even if there are certain things that you need to rip out of the foundation and take the very soil. Sometimes, if I'm equating it to sort of marriage and the home, sometimes you divorce for the right reasons. There is such a thing. Not that I'm wishing it on you, Robert. I don't know the nature of your situation, so far be it from me to say. I'm saying there is that, of course, which is why we have a ketubah. It's why we have a get. It's why we have that entire thing in the Torah, where, yeah, that can happen. Patriarchal tyranny aside and religious oppression aside, it does exist there, and there's a. But let's not go there. Let's not go there right now. Shabbos is a coming soon. How shall I tie this together? Well, I'll read the chat. Maybe something will come to me there. I'm talking about when I agreed with Robert about the written Torah. Oh, yes. You said that you agree. Obviously, a Karaite would definitely agree. You loved it and gave it a like. Yes, I love and give a like to anything, basically, because I appreciate it and I want you to know I took the time to clickety click. And even if I read the comment later, which I sometimes do with larger comments, if I read it later, I still want to say, hey, I saw it, I acknowledge it, thanks for that. I love the engagement. And I do love the engagement. I don't take it for granted that you would take time out of your day, out of your life to listen to my ramblings, whether it's live or whether it's later. I deeply appreciate it. And I hope that I am of some value. And I also hope that we can all bring these blah, blah, blahings down to the practical, physical level. That's what I'm talking about. Perhaps that's why I'm taking this idea of biblical leprosy of the home, which is so foreign and so strange, and wanting to bring it really down to earth with a couple fighting and ways of approaching it. There's patience that we need to learn. And it's necessary. The quarantine, having that 7-day quarantine is necessary because you need to let things be in order to see if they express themselves and how they go about it. If you have a certain fight, having a kind of designated pause, if possible, can be really crucial. They say, like a classic cliche piece of advice for married people is don't go to bed angry. But no, sometimes you need to go to bed angry in order to wake up and have that and be refreshed, even a little bit in mind and body. Have that time when you are away from your anger, away from the anxiety. Maybe your dreams are affected, right? But still, your body is at relative rest more often than not. And you're not still in the fight and in the frustration and in the. You're able to say goodbye to that and rest. Sometimes you go to bed angry. Sometimes you go to bed angry a couple of days in a row or more. There are stories, I've said this before. Two subreddits which I frequent regularly are the Dead Bedrooms subreddit and the Forever Alone subreddit. And I do it because it's so foreign to me, like practically speaking. I've never experienced either one of those things in well to the degree that people there are experiencing. Some of those are quite extreme, and I've never been there. I've had my bouts of loneliness and dry spells as as any person, but not like that, not in some of those cases. And I do that to stay focused. This idea of approaching the marriage, having patience, right? Approaching the confrontation in the marriage there, and having patience, and sometimes going to bed angry, sometimes letting that be, giving it those 7 days, and then coming from a place again where the priest comes and sees. It's not you. You outsource that. You say, okay, we need to figure something out. We need to have some sort of impartial, if you will, um, spiritually based approach to this. That can also help to prevent the spiraling out of control. I've noticed that. I mean, look, I could talk about. I have 20 years of experience fighting with my woman. Not to say that we fight every day, obviously. We don't, thank God. But we've had our share of fights as any 20, almost 19-year-old married couple, right? 19 years of marriage would. So even if I'm reaching with this analogy of the leprosy of the home, I think it still can be applied here. Beito zo ishto, his home, that is his woman. Okay, let's see. Wait, there's vegan white chocolate? Yes, there is vegan white chocolate. I love products that are vegan, says little Andre. Yes, I know, I'm just reminding you. Okay, yes, well, thank you for the reminder of what I agreed with. Yes, I appreciate the reminder because I didn't know what you were saying there. I need to take the bike ring, soil, and tools. Wait, I need to get the bike ring, soil, and tools out of the house. Thank you. Oh, bikering? Wait, bikering? I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm not sure if you're actually saying bike ring. I rode a bike for 7 years. I don't know what a bike ring is. So elaborate. Bikering, like the priest. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me try and read this. I'm trying to. Okay, let's see. I need to take the bickering soil and tools it out of the house, like the priest. I don't want to assume I know what you're saying there exactly, but if you're saying that you agree that it could help to have an outsider take a look, ideally, according to Torah, an outsider that has more of a different connection than different connection. Now you could say, okay, but what if it's a Cohen and his wife? I think they would still call a different Cohen, an Inspector Cohen, if you will, Inspector Cohen, to come and inspect the house. I think even if the homeowner is a priest, they would still call another priest. I think so. That's an interesting question. I may have thought this in the past. I don't know if you know what? I'd have to read the halacha. Maybe the halacha says no. If he's a priest, he can do it himself. I wonder. So those of you out there who are halacha buffs, I will look this up, but I do need to go. Let me know, and I'm going to look this up too. If you want, does a priest homeowner need to call another priest, or can he perform the inspection himself? I have a sneaking suspicion that with how the Torah is written, Halacha would say that they still call someone else, even if he himself is a priest. But I might be wrong. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. Oh, sorry, Derech Hagav says, Shuv Derech Hagav. Again, by the way, says little Andre, I was just busy watching a rabbi in Israel who were talking about leprosy in the wall. Well, yes, it's this week's Torah portion, obviously. Out of control when I roll, you better hide in a hole. So I don't know the reference or the quote, but when I roll, oh, you know what? I want to do Molly again at some point. I only did it a few times in my life, with plenty of time in between rolling. But wow, I'd like to do that again sometime. On that note, on a note of ecstasy, well, I'm going to say I wish us all a lovely Shabbos, a happy Shabbos, a blessed and wonderful and blissful and restful and lovely and love-filled, Torah-filled Shabbos, a taste of the world to come. A Shabbos where everything is already prepared because we have toiled and we merited it. We rest on the Shabbos out of our labor, not just because it was one of the other trees in the garden. We rest on the Shabbos, we rest in the world to come because we made it happen. Inshallah. Those of us who are bickering with our woman, be it actual bickering with a woman or sort of borrowing that as an analogy to things that we are dealing with, confrontations we're having, negative vibration in the home or outside, inside or outside of ourselves, everything, may it all come to a peaceful resolution with the arrival of this Shabbos Queen. There's a reason why we say Shabbat Shalom. There's a quality to Shabbos that can bring peace to the household. Because you are forced not to work. Abstain from the labor. Focus on the spirit. It can bring you closer. Having that spiritual eye, like the priest that has that spiritual eye on the home and on the individual. The priest can discern certain things, afflictions of the skin and the house. And you in your own home, in your own skin on Shabbos, you can discern other things too. You need to have a Shabbos at least once a week. On that note, a note of ecstasy on Shabbos. May it be a Shabbos of ecstasy, of a joy of a mitzvah. God bless. Shabbat Shalom. I hopefully will read the end of the chant on Monday. Until then, a short or something like that. I hope on Sunday. Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate it. God bless. Toda leah.